Hello and welcome back to the Engage 8 podcast. I'm Josh with my co-host Mike. Today is Tuesday, August 13th as we're recording. Today's episode is going to be covering some of the headlines coming out of training camp, mostly focused on some of the early injuries we've had and some guys that may be out for a while or may be back soon. And we're also going to do the main part of this episode, which is, of course, the AFC and NFC West previews for the 2024-25 season. We'll go through every team. We'll talk about how they look going into next season, what they did in the offseason, all of that good stuff. But before that, we'll start with the headlines. Mike, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, there's been a few very big injuries so far early in training camp. We have just today, August 13th, JJ McCarthy. Looks like he will be out for an extended period of time with a torn meniscus. Very unfortunate for the young Jets quarterback. It looks like Sam Darnold will step in and start at least week one and for the foreseeable future until JJ McCarthy is healthy. He is a young guy. This could be good for him to just kind of learn the ins and outs of being a quarterback, kind of like Anthony Richardson. Just kind of be behind the scenes and see how the quarterbacks go and get a couple weeks to get under his belt. Yesterday, Jahmyr Gibbs dealing with a hamstring injury now, very unfortunate for the Lions. Malik Neighbors, he's been great in training camp. He goes down with an ankle injury. Hollywood Brown with a very scary sternoclavicular, I don't know how to say that word, sternoclavicular joint, something like his shoulder up here. He was in the hospital for a while. It's a very serious injury with health. I don't think it's going to be too long of a timetable to return, but it's a very
You
scary
said
injury.
Hollywood?
Yeah, Marquise Brown.
I have to change a couple things here. Get to
Yeah, I think he won't be out too long, but it's just a scary injury for
Oh no,
immediate.
I didn't. I guess I can kind of spoil this. I was gonna have him as like a sleeper offensive player of the year, but I ended up not going with him anyway. So I
No,
guess
so you're good.
yeah,
Um,
that shit.
Another player that we will talk about today, Christian McCaffrey. He's dealing with a calf injury. It seems like. I assume he'd be okay for week one. Puka Nacua as well as week to week with I think a knee injury. So some big names here. Josh Downs for the Colts. He'll be out until at least week one with a sprained ankle. Just unfortunate as well. And then Rondale Moore, knee injury. It looks like his season might be over. He had to get like an air cast, and the Falcons canceled practice. Very sad to see. And then today as well, on August 13th, Tyron Tracy, rookie for the Giants, kind of converted into a running back. Had looked good in their first game, but he also got a bad leg injury and needed that air cast to go off the field. So it's always a lot of, seems like there's always injuries in training camp, but a lot of rough ones to some big names here.
Yeah, I think JJ McCarthy, I think he's going to be fine. If you're going to hurt something in your knee, you want it to be your meniscus, I would say. That's the one you could return from. Obviously, if you tore his ACL, we'd be having a different conversation here. I think Sam Darnold was going to start regardless, in my opinion. So I'm not too, I wouldn't be too concerned for them. Like you said, I think it could be beneficial for him to now for sure have to sit behind Darnold for a few weeks at least. If there was always the option of Darnold starting and then sucking and then JJ McCarthy coming in right away, that's probably not going to be an option anymore. But regardless, it's going to give him time to sit back. The part that sucks the most is the fact he's not going to be able to practice. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
But for the Lions, you said Jahmyr Gibbs hamstring. That sucks. Hamstring is just not what you want to really hear ever. Also, Terrion Arnold went down yesterday with an upper body. Ennis Rakestraw went down with an ankle for the Lions. So it was a really bad day at practice for the Lions. It's funny how Rondale Moore will hurt himself and get an air cast on, and then the whole practice gets canceled, but the Lions will just go until the whole team is hurt. Regardless, I think they'll be good. I think Arnold and Rakestraw will be fine. I'm worried about Jahmyr Gibbs missing a little bit of the early season, but we won't get a report on that probably for a little bit, I'd assume. Definitely three players that are going to make a difference if they're not in the lineup for the Lions. You said Hollywood. Yeah, if hopefully Hollywood can come back. We're going to talk about him here in just a few seconds, but I have high hopes for him this year. And I think that's about it. Yeah, that's about all I had for the injuries.
Um,
It sucks. You hate to see it, but something that's going to happen and something I guess you get to bitch about early if you're a fan.
yeah, I saw just a couple ones that aren't very serious as well. I know thought I saw that Justin Herbert was dealing with a foot injury. Yeah, Justin Herbert's dealing with a little bit of a foot injury. Dak Prescott ankle. They should be okay though, going into the future.
I mean, it's so hard for a quarterback to get hurt during camp. Like you just don't
Yeah.
really see it happen. So when it happens, it's just painfully unlucky. But
Oh, I
I
see Laporta with a hamstring too.
Laporta's been hurt for a minute.
Oh,
He's been out for a while, but I think he'll be fine. It looks like Brian Branch is playing a little bit too, but Lions are an injury-filled team. They just are every year. It's just something we got to deal with. But As much as Jahmyr Gibbs is definitely the worst, like the best player we have hurt, I would argue that Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw together is significantly more of a loss than Gibbs. Because at least you still have Monty, who's still probably
Yeah.
a top 15 running back in the league. You're losing the two guys you drafted to build up the secondary. So that is unfortunate, but it looks like those two are going to be short term injuries, hopefully.
Yeah. That's all I got for injuries.
All right. So we'll get
Oh,
into it.
well, one
Okay.
more headline. I can't believe I missed these two headlines. Brandon Ayuk trade. We've been talking about that recently. Looks like the Steelers are the front runner again, and I think that's a real report this time. And then Hassan Reddick, after we talked
Oh,
about
right.
him last week with the Jets, um, looked like he requested a trade already in his first training camp with the Jets. It'll be interesting to see. They said they're not going to trade him. It'll be interesting to see how that whole thing will play out.
Yeah. I mean, you got three guys on the market right now, three huge names in Reddick, Judon, and Ayuk. I mean,
Yeah,
all three of those guys are huge moves. The problem is all three of those guys you're going to have to pay. So we're going to see what team is willing to pay. I personally, I think Ayuk is a fantastic receiver. I don't think any team is going to trade for him that already has a wide receiver one, though. It just doesn't make sense to pay your wide receiver two what he wants. But Judon and Reddick, I think, are probably worth their deals unless they want like 5 year, 4 year deals. But I don't think that's the case. I think Reddick will probably get like a 2 year deal. I bet he gets like 2 years, like 75, something
yeah,
like that. I'd say probably a lot, mostly guaranteed. But I don't know. It's hard to ask for a trade. I mean, the Jets did know though, so it's not like you can completely say the Jets are. It's not the Jets' fault. Like they knew trading for him that he wanted a contract. They weren't able to get it done before the trade, and they said, "Fuck it, we'll just risk it anyways." We're sitting here on August 13th. They still haven't made a move, and now he wants out. But
yeah. He's in trouble. It'll be Eagles go and trade a 6th round pick, get Hassan Reddick back, pay him.
that would be
That's
crazy. That would be crazy.
that's some.
I honestly, I think he'd make play if they didn't want to pay him and the Eagles just traded a 6th round back for him. I could see him just being like, "Fuck it, I guess I'm back to where I started. I'm honestly just
Yeah,
play at this point." But or even a one. I don't know why he doesn't just get like a not a Chris Jones deal for the 1 year, but like similar as
yeah. That wouldn't shock me.
quick one
Something
year.
that's just guaranteed.
Yeah, and that I could see coming from the Jets too. I could see the Jets caving in and giving him like a 1 year deal.
I think that would be smart for them. I mean, this is their season right here that they have to go and compete for the championship. So you got to go all in.
I agree. I think that I liked the move trading for him. I think you just have to hold on to him. But we'll move on here to our AFC and NFC West preview. We will start with the AFC West, and we will start with the defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. They, of course, went 11-6 in 2023 in the regular season, went on to win the Super Bowl. They didn't lose a ton of guys or add a ton of guys in the offseason. We'll start with the losses. They, of course, lost L'Jarius Sneed. We kind of knew that was going to happen. He goes to the Titans. They lose Donovan Smith and Allegretti on the line. As far as receivers, they just lose MVS, who isn't the biggest loss. When I will talk about in a second who they brought in. They also lose Willie Gay and Mike Edwards. Those are really their biggest 6 losses, or was that 7-6, whatever. Their only real additions, like that are meaningful in my opinion, are Hollywood Brown. Like we said, I think if healthy, I think he's going to have a phenomenal year. He's been ready to break out. It seems like he was with Lamar when Lamar had no other targets but him and Mark Andrews, and Lamar wasn't really throwing the ball at that point. He went to Arizona, loses Kyler, has to play with a backup, then he gets hurt. He missed a lot of time in Arizona, and now he's here in the best situation he could possibly be in Kansas City. I think he's going to really succeed. But they also get Irv Smith Jr., who is going to be a solid backup tight end. My boy Noah Gray, sadly, is probably going to take a hit from this. But now that I thought of that, I should probably go pick him up ASAP. But Xavier Worthy also got drafted from the Kansas City Chiefs. He has 99 speed in Madden already or some shit. I don't even know. It's like 98. It's crazy. He's getting the JMO treatment early. But I think, of course, he's going to be really, really, really good for the Chiefs. Their biggest weakness last year of wide receiver depth got significantly addressed with Worthy and Hollywood. Of course, they also re-signed Chris Jones, which was a big question mark going into last season. As we just said, they gave him that 1 year deal, and now they signed him to a full extension this year. Their biggest issue, in my opinion, is O-line. I think that's something they really needed to address in the offseason. They didn't do a fantastic job of that with losing Allegretti and Donovan Smith. Left guard, center are good for them. They're pretty set there. Right tackle is okay, and right guard and left tackle are definitely the question marks for them. Defense should still be really good. They were last year. I would rather have their weakness last year of having Mahomes but having no receiver help and just have Mahomes figure it out. I'd rather have that than have the O line question marks that I think they have this year. But it's Mahomes and Andy Reid. They're gonna figure it out. I don't think that's gonna be that big of an issue. But if I had to point out a glaring issue, it would be offensive line.
Yeah, this team is still, I mean, we can say whatever we want. Maybe their roster isn't as good, but they still have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, and that's really all that matters. We saw last season they struggled for basically most, if not all of the regular season. They go into the playoffs and they dominate and win the Super Bowl. Mahomes wins Super Bowl MVP, and it's just kind of it's a dynasty. It's really not much else to say. Like you said, they bring in Marquise Brown. I had mentioned that he's hurt, and I'm looking at it right now. They say he's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks, so he aims to return about week 3 of the NFL season. So that's still 1 or 2 games. Maybe he's out. You can see Xavier Worthy how he does at receiver for them. That's their first round pick. He broke the 40-yard dash record. Very impressive for him there. It's a very fast receiving court. Rashee Rice, I don't think he got suspended for the start of the season. On offense, I'm very interested to see how they if they're going to continue to run the ball with Pacheco more. They also brought in Carson Steele out of Ball State. He went to UCLA. They have him listed as a fullback right now. It'll be interesting to see if the Chiefs bring back a fullback. Nothing like a good fullback. The offensive line, like you said, they lost a couple guys. I still like this offensive line. I'm not the biggest Jawan Taylor fan, but I think he can do a solid job. And then Kingsley Suamatia. I don't know if I said that right, but he is a rookie. It'll be interesting to see if he can develop or if he will be great right away. And defensively, this team was phenomenal last season. Like you said, they lose L'Jarius Sneed. They still got Trent McDuffie. They still got Chris Jones. Those are the two big guys. Charles Omenihu, who got injured in the AFC Championship last season. They don't expect him back till November, but I'm not really worried about this defense. They do lack a little bit of depth in certain positions, but we saw last season this defense was phenomenal. They don't have any coaching changes from last season. I don't really expect this team to do worse than they did last season. I feel like they have to be better. Last season, I think they had like the second most drops in the NFL. Now the receivers they have now still could be susceptible to drops, but I think they'll be fine. It's the Chiefs. They have Patrick Mahomes. I'm not really too worried as long as he's under center and stays healthy. They did bring in Carson Wentz as well as a backup QB, and Matt Ariza, the punter from the Bills, who had some off the field issues but got free from it, and he's he can punt the ball pretty well.
Yeah. We also neither of us mentioned Nick Bolton, who's still on the team, healthy. He's
Mhm.
was one of their best defensive players all year last year. They still have him. I think they're still going to be really dominant on defense, which is a scary sight. But moving on here to the Los Angeles Chargers, who of course had a complete overhaul. They brought in Coach Jim Harbaugh. I'll get into that a little bit later, but we'll start with their offseason. They add Will Dissly, DJ Chark, Gus Edwards, Bud Dupree, J.K. Dobbins, and then they, of course, drafted Joe Alt in the first round and Ladd McConkey in the second round. They lose both of their best receivers in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Addition by subtraction, losing Eric Kendricks. They lost Austin Eckler, who is also probably an addition by subtraction at this point. They lose Gerald Everett, which I think is a tough loss. They also lose Kenneth Murray, Jalen Guyton, Will Clapp, and Corey Linsley. I think Harbaugh and Herbert are going to be really successful at some point. I just don't really know when that's going to happen. I think this offense is going to be really good still. I think Herbert is great. Edwards and Dobbins should succeed with Harbaugh, which is funny that they're back together. Let's see if history repeats itself. Dobbins gets hurt. Edwards comes in and gets a ton of yards. The wide receiver core, despite losing Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, is solid. They still have Josh Palmer. They, of course, drafted Ladd McConkey from Georgia, who is supposed to be pretty good. Might be wide receiver 1 for them next year. They have Quentin Johnson, who they drafted from TCU last season. This will be his second year. He had a pretty bad first year, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that there's, of course, a chance he could turn it around. He was really talented at TCU, and I think he has great size, but you can't teach. And DJ Chark, they also added, who I think is a good enough receiver that you could easily have him at wide receiver 2 or 3 with McConkey, Palmer, and Quentin Johnson. They, of course, have a great tackle pair with Rashawn Slater and now Joe Alt. That's going to be super, super beneficial to Justin Herbert and keeping him healthy for the foreseeable future. So I agree with the pick they made there at number 5. They have great pieces on their defense with Bosa, Mack, Samuel, Derwin James. But the rest of their defense is just full of holes overall. I think they're going to score a ton of points, but I think they're just going to give up more points, and I think they end up as an average team.
Yeah, I can see that. I love what they did with the O-line, bringing in Joe Alt. I think this O-line is going to be pretty good, especially if they want to run the ball a lot, which Jim Harbaugh likes to do. Greg Roman, their new offensive coordinator, he likes to do that as well. It's going to be interesting to see how he kind of coaches. He's been more successful with more mobile quarterbacks. We've seen Greg Roman be very successful with Colin Kaepernick, successful with Lamar Jackson, and now he's going to kind of more of a pocket passer, almost in Justin Herbert, who's still mobile, but you kind of just want to keep him in the pocket and use his arm. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, but I think that'll be fine because I believe in Justin Herbert. This receiving room isn't good, but I feel like it's good enough to get the job done. I've always kind of liked Josh Palmer. I think he's a good player. I think Ladd McConkey is going to be very good this season. I'm buying a lot of stock on him. Like you said, DJ Chark, he's just a guy you can put in that wide receiver 3, and he can get the job done. Quentin Johnson, he can't really get much worse than he did last year. And then they also drafted Brendan Rice, grandson of Jerry Rice, or son, late in the draft. He
Grandson, I
could
believe.
develop. Yeah, I thought it was grandson. And hopefully he maybe is able to develop into something here. I've been seeing some good things from him out of training camp. On the offensive side, you had mentioned J.K. Dobbs and Gus Edwards. Crazy that those two stay together. But
With Greg Roman. They just built the
yeah,
Ravens under her nose.
yeah, crazy. Hopefully J.K. Dobbs can stay healthy and get some stuff done this year. I also like Kimani Vidal out of Troy. He's a running back. I think he could be very good for them. Those young running backs, I think they're going to have to use more than they're Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins have to stay healthy. So we'll see how that goes. And then defensively, like you said, they got some really good pieces. Khalil Mack, Sante Samuel's all right, but just like you said, a lot of holes. It'll be interesting to see how their new defensive coordinator too, Jesse Minter, he's from Michigan as well, how he's able to do it. I think they're going to be able to get to the quarterback. Their pass rush is going to be pretty good. They got Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Bud Dupree. They got some guys there, but I just think they're going to kind of get passed all over for most of the season. It's going to be, like you said, I think they're just going to kind of average out, win a lot of games with their offense, but lose a couple games because of this defense is rough in certain spots.
Yeah, all I'll say is maybe they end up having a good defense this year. Finally, I don't see that happening. I'm not going to fall for they have 4 super talented pieces and they should be good as they continue every year to have so much talent on defense but suck. I'm not going to buy into that. I do think their defense is going to be bad again. But I do like how Harbaugh went in and he's like, okay, we have a great passing quarterback, probably but definitely a top 10 passing quarterback, probably like top 5 or 6. We don't have a run game. We haven't had a run game basically Herbert's whole career. Even when Eckler was good, that was never a strength of them, was running between the tackles. Now, you still have a shitty interior offensive line. There's no way around that, even if your tackles are good. But you have Harbaugh, who is a guy that loves to run the ball, and he just goes, okay, give me Roman, give me Edwards, give me Dobbins. The Ravens have been good at running the ball the past however long. That should work. And I actually think that will probably help them a lot. I think there's going to be some growing pains not having Lamar in this offensive scheme. But regardless, I think they're going to be a lot better running the ball than they have been, which is a positive, which is why I think, despite not having nearly as much talent as they've had in years past, especially on the offensive end, I still think they're going to finish with as good, if not better, of a record than they have been recently. I think off the top of my head, I think they probably finished like 9-8.
Yeah, I'd have to say something kind of similar. I think they're going to win games, like you said. Will this defense perform? I think this defense will be better than last year. Last year, they kind of just didn't give too much of an effort. I mean, we saw the game against the Raiders. They gave up how many points? They looked pathetic. Yeah. I think they're going to at least give a very good effort in every game this year. I don't expect cheating Jim Harbaugh to let this defense go out there and just get ran all over, and Jesse Minter as well. So they're going to put up more of an effort. Junior Colson, another guy they drafted, linebacker. He's from Michigan. Maybe he can start here later in the year, but Denzel Perryman seems to have that job, and that's a solid linebacker to have.
I bet Colson starts soon. I bet he starts early. I think Harbaugh's just going to like him. too much. And
Those Michigan guys, yeah,
I honestly think he'll be decent. I have a decent amount of confidence in him. But
I do as well.
all right, moving on here to the Las Vegas Raiders. They were 8-9 in 2023. They added Christian Wilkins, who was a huge add for them. I love that. They added Gardner Minshew, who is probably going to start over AOC. Added Alexander Madison, Jalen Guyton. They drafted Brock Bowers and Jackson Powers Johnson as their two impactful draft picks. They lose Jimmy G, who is now I think suspended for PEDs or something with the Rams. They lose Josh Jacobs, Bilal Nichols, Jermaine Illuminor, Austin Hooper, Hunter Renfro, and Amik Robertson. Some of these guys like Hunter Renfro's addition by subtraction. Some of these guys like Josh Jacobs, Bilal Nichols, Amik Robertson, I think are going to be significant losses for them. They had a very strong draft, in my opinion. I think both Bowers and JPJ, even though JPJ might not start immediately, are impact players immediately. O-line isn't as bad as it has been, but it's still a weakness in my opinion. Wilkins is a great piece, and him and Crosby, I think, together are going to be one of the top D-line duos in the league. Quarterback, of course, giant question mark for them, as it has been over the past few years. It's between Minshew and AOC. I think Minshew starting can keep them semi-competitive, and I actually, even though I like AOC, I would trust Minshew more, and I think if they want to tank, I think they start AOC. If they want to try to win some games that maybe they shouldn't, I think Minshew is the option because they have enough talent around them. My biggest concern is their secondary giving up a ton of pass yards. They do not have the deepest secondary at all. I think they're definitely susceptible to giving up a ton of passing yards, which could be a significant problem for them. Zamir White, he's everybody's favorite player to break out this year. He looks jacked. He has no Josh Jacobs in front of him. Their O-line is actually decent. Like I said, it's not nearly as bad as it has been. Zamir White should have a big year, especially if they're not able to pass the ball a ton. Offense has the good pieces to succeed, but I think they're going to be about average on offense and defense this year. I think they end up finishing a little bit below 500. They just do not have, unless they produce some units offensively or defensively that just become dominant. I don't see them having any insane weaknesses, but I also don't see them having really any insane strengths. So I'm pretty average on this team in general.
Yeah, with the Raiders, it's a very interesting team here because they just have a lot of guys that I like. I mean, they've had elite players and then some just positions where they have holes, specifically at running back. Zamir White, I'm not the biggest fan of. I think he'll get a lot of volume, but I don't know how much he will do with that volume, this offensive line. We've talked about how they could be very good with the run, but it'll kind of just wait and see. At the quarterback position, I like Gardner Minshew. He led the Colts to the playoffs, but I don't know how great he'll be with a guy like Devontae Adams. He likes to throw just a lot of checkdowns. He doesn't really throw the ball past 5 yards. It'll be interesting to see how the Raiders receivers like that. I think it'd almost be better to start with AOC, maybe see how he does, if he can kind of continue off the little bit of success he had later in the season last year. But it'll just be interesting. I'm not the biggest fan of this offense, but I wasn't a fan of him last year, and Antonio Pierce got him going. They looked good for that second half of the season when they were fighting for a playoff spot. Jacoby Myers was phenomenal for him last season. Brock Bowers is their big draft from this year's draft. I'm not the biggest fan of the pick, considering they already had Michael Mayer from last year's draft, but when you're able to add a guy that talented to that room with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers already, they got some weapons for the quarterback, whoever it is, to throw to. He's just going to have to be able to throw it to him. The pass rush for this team defensively is going to be very good. Max Crosby, he was second in pressures above expected. Malcolm Kuntz was 16th, and Christian Wilkins was 19th. This defense has some guys that are going to get to the quarterback. They're going to be in the backfield a lot. They just need their secondary, which struggled last year, 29th in pass coverage. They're going to have to step up a little bit. Jack Jones has made some plays. They just need some of these guys to step up. Jacorian Bennett as well. He needs to step up. The secondary, they're going to make mistakes, but if this D-line can really dominate, they're kind of like the Chargers where the pass rush is going to have to get there to kind of bail out the secondary for being not as good. It'll be interesting to see. I also kind of see this team as like an 8-win team, maybe a 7-win team, but I think it all depends on how the quarterback position plays. And I also hope Tyree Wilson has another breakout season. That's another guy who can be phenomenal for them in the pass rush.
Yeah, they need him to be good. Hopefully, he can live up to his expectations. I don't have much else to say about the Raiders, but I do have an update. I just saw a tweet from Sleeper. They're adding a new feature where you can do like if scenarios. So like you could set your lineup and be like, okay, if Saquon Barkley ends, like if he's questionable, you can have if Saquon is out, put in Rashad
Oh
White.
wow,
So
that's game changing.
you could have that set like beforehand, which is I think pretty sick.
I can't
But
believe that hasn't already been a thing, but I'm
and
glad that Sleepers finally. It's basically the best fantasy app out there right now.
yeah, they're going to be the one to do it. And Tyrone Trace's leg injury is apparently not as bad as they thought.
Really
I just saw a tweet about it from Schefter retweeted. Let's see.
good for him. That's good news. I mean, when you get air casted off, that is like the air cast usually means they're fearing the worst. But
Yeah, already back in meetings, sigh of relief.
oh
So,
wow, that's crazy.
so that's good for him.
Great
But
for him.
we can move on here to the Denver Broncos, who also finished 8-9 in 2023. They added John Franklin Myers, drafted Bo Nix, of course, added Zach Wilson, Josh Reynolds, and Brandon Jones. Their major losses are, excuse me, Justin Simmons, Russell Wilson, Josie Jewell, Jerry Judy, and Lloyd Cushenberry. Those biggest losses being Judy, Cushenberry, and Simmons, of course. Jesus, huge question mark at quarterback, and not very many other positives for them, which has me very concerned. I liked the Broncos last year. I really was invested in their comeback after like a 1-6 start when they came back and were up to 500, finished 8-9, of course. Whoever plays QB for this team, whether it's Bo Nix or Zach Wilson, they're going to have plenty of weapons at the quarterback position. They're going to have Javante as their running back. They're going to have Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, and Josh Reynolds. But sadly, they're going to have a mid at best offensive line. I think this is probably on the back half of the O lines in the NFL. Defense is talented. They could probably use another reliable cornerback. I think let's see. I wanted to pull that up. I think a hold on. Yeah, that okay. My assumption was correct. One of my notes from last year snuck in there. I thought I saw that, and that makes more sense. Okay, yeah, the run defense I think is going to be very bad. Once again, they were one of the worst in the league last year. I think they continue to be bad this year. I think the defense as a whole. I mean, of course they have pieces like they have Pat Surtain, who we both had as one of the best corners in the league. They have Brandon Jones, who I think is a pretty solid safety. Zach Allen and John Franklin Myers on the line, but overall, I think this is going to be like their O line on the bad end of mid as far as it goes in the league. In my opinion, on paper, they have the least talent in the division by far. And I am not very confident in this team at all. Although Bo Nix did throw like 150 passing yards on 21 attempts or some crazy shit like that. But they were throwing a lot of short passes. He was completing them. Looks like it's going to be Bo Nix, honestly, in my opinion. And we'll see. He, at this point, in my opinion, doesn't have anything to lose. Got drafted way higher than he expected, made more money than he expected to. And he's going to be on a team that doesn't have super high expectations.
Yeah, I think this is actually one of the better positions Bo Nix could have been in. He's got a great coach, Sean Payton, to help him through his career. Uh, he looked great in his first preseason game against the Colts. I got to watch a pretty good amount of that game. He looked good. He's making quick decisions. He looked confident. Everyone on Twitter is saying this could finally be the year that he wins the Heisman, so that's big for him. But in college, like you had kind of mentioned, he didn't really throw the ball deep. He had the third worst average depth of target at only 6 yards. He was 133rd in among FBS quarterbacks with at least 150 pass attempts. So he's going to have to start throwing the ball downfield a little bit more. But I mean, he's got some great weapons to do that too. Cortland Sutton, like you said, Troy Franklin, draft picked out of Oregon as well. He didn't have I guess he's not having the best training camp so far out of the receivers that they have. So hopefully he can kind of figure it out. But like you said, this team, I would also put them maybe worst in the talent position. Their offensive line's just kind of mid, like you said. They don't really have the best tight ends as well. Javante Williams, hopefully he can finally break out and have a great running back season like we've been expecting from him for a couple years now. And then defensively, just not a big fan of. They don't really have much going on. They obviously have Surtain, like you said. They lost Justin Simmons, which is big for them. Josie Jewell as well was a tough loss for them. I just think they're gonna have to kind of go through the season, and they just need to hope Bo Nix has a great season, and hopefully they can really decide if he's the quarterback of the future. And they're gonna have to just go on from there.
All right, moving on to the standing projections before we get into the awards. Of course, I have the Kansas City Chiefs winning this division, getting first place. That's pretty obvious, self-explanatory. After that, though, it's pretty up in the air. For me, I don't think any of these teams are too far above the rest, but I am gonna have the Broncos in last, just because I think they have the most question marks and the least amount of high-end talent. Actually, now that I look at it, I think I have the Broncos pretty solidified in last, which brings me to the Chargers and the Raiders for second and third, which I think the team with I would almost say the team that has less glaring holes is the Raiders, but when you have I think the Chargers have a lot more top end talent, and of course I really trust Jim Harbaugh to be able to get this team wins that maybe they shouldn't get. For that reason, I have Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, Broncos. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I have the Chiefs winning this division as well. They have the best quarterback in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes. There's no doubt in my mind that they'll win the division. And then second and third, that's also where I have the big. It's kind of the tough one, but I'm also going to put the Chargers at second. I'm going to pick the team with the better quarterback, Justin Herbert. I think he's going to have a great season. He's got a great coach. Great coach Jim Harbaugh to lead him. And I just think they have to be better than last year. I think their defense will be good enough to get them that second position, maybe fight for a wild card spot. And then Raiders in third as well, and Broncos definitely in last for this one.
All right, so we'll do some awards now. OROY, DROY, OPOY, DPOY, and MVP for the AFC West. Starting off with Offensive Rookie of the Year. There are some options here. You could go with the receiver from Kansas City. You could also go with Brock Bowers from the Raiders, who, of course, could have a huge season. Maybe one of the most talented, if not the most talented, offensive player in the draft. You could also go with Bo Nix. Maybe he starts and ends up having a good season. We saw a good preseason game from him. You could also go with Lad McConkey, who is allegedly going to be the wide receiver one in LA, which with Justin Herbert puts him in a great spot to put up a ton of stats. But going to go with Joe Alt, the tackle from the Chargers. I think it was just a great pick for them. I think it was a good need pick. He gets to play on the other side of Rashawn Slater, who is by no means a veteran, but he's going to be able to learn a lot from him. I think he's going to be able to be in a position where his role is very important, and I think he's going to succeed in that role. So for that reason, I have Joe Alt as my rookie of the year. A lot of options though in this division.
Yeah, a lot of offensive options in this division, like you said. I like the Joe Alt pick there. All of the guys you mentioned are great. I'm gonna go with Lad McConkey. I think he's gonna get a lot of volume as the receiver in that Chargers offense. His main competition is Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnson, I guess, but I think he's gonna kind of stand out and have a phenomenal season. He's a great route runner. I think Herbert's gonna love Lad McConkey.
All right, which brings us to Defensive Rookie of the Year, and I'm sure you noticed this when you prepared for
Yes.
it. There's not a single defensive player drafted in the first two rounds in this
No.
division, which
This
is
is
crazy. Which brings me to I feel like I'm almost strong armed. I'm picking Junior Colson, who we talked about earlier, as
yeah.
my Defensive Rookie of the Year. I just think him being in Harbaugh's system, he's going to be in the game a lot, which of course puts him in a situation where he could, if he sucks, it's going to be very glaring. But it also puts him in a position where if he's a third round pick and he's even average at a position of linebacker, which is so tough to play in your rookie year, if he could be even average for them as a third round pick, I think that's going to lead to him having to be defensive rookie of the year when you look at his competition in this division.
Yeah, there's just not many options in this division at all. I have either Junior Colson, linebacker for Chargers, or Tommy Eichenberg, linebacker Raiders. I'm gonna go with Junior Colson as well. It's not one that's flashy at all. I think he is the one that's just most likely to kind of be on the field at this point.
That's where I was at, yeah.
Yeah, the Michigan defense. He's been with Jesse Minter before. I think Jesse Minter will trust him as that linebacker.
All right, moving on here to Offensive Player of the Year. Like I said, I considered putting Hollywood here, but I'm going to take the gamble on maybe him not being able to be healthy all year as he gets older, but it's hard for me not to take Travis Kelce here. There's plenty of options in this division. Could have went with Devontae. Could have went with anybody on the Chiefs, really, or honestly, even Lad McConkey could have a phenomenal year. He just could. He's gonna have the opportunity. He's gonna have the target share, and he has a great quarterback. But I'm going with Kelce. It's hard for me not to. best tight end in the league, still, in my opinion, has the strongest connection with his quarterback in this division, and his quarterback happens to be arguably the best quarterback to ever live. So I'm going to take Travis Kelce.
Yeah, I had it between Travis Kelce and Justin Herbert. I'm just going to go with Herbert. I think he's going to have a great season for this Chargers offense. He's got a decent offensive line to really help him there. He doesn't have the receivers, but he's been dealing with a lot of banged up receivers most of his career. I think if he can develop the connection with Lad McConkey that I expect him to, I think he'll be fine with Josh Palmer. He knows Josh Palmer. I think he's just going to have a great season and kind of prove some haters wrong. And I guess he won't win as many games as he should, but he'll put up the stats like he always does.
All right, defensive player of the year. There's really three options here. You have Crosby, Jones, and Pat Surtain are really your biggest three options here. I went with Crosby. I think he's the best defensive player. And that's tough. It's him and Chris Jones are neck and neck for me for best defensive player in this division. He's of course great, and he's only going to be better with Christian Wilkins on the inside to help him. He really hasn't had any significant D-line help at all his whole career, and he's still been able to perform. He's dominant. I think he's going to continue to be that and win Defensive Player of the Year for this division for me.
Yeah, I have Max Crosby as well. For that reason, with Christian Wilkins, like you said, that's only going to benefit Max Crosby just as much. He's always gets pressure on the quarterback. Every game he stands out. I think he's going to continue to do that. I think he's going to get a lot of sacks. I have a sneaky take that he might lead the NFL in sacks this season, but
I can see that. I can see that.
I think he's going to be the Defensive Player of the Year in this division, and definitely I think he'll be top 3 in the NFL.
Yeah, I've got Mahomes at MVP. I don't know. I mean, what are we going to say about that? Best player in the world.
Yeah,
I genuinely have no explanation for you. I don't think it matters who his. I mean, we saw his receivers lead the league in drops last year, and he was still the best quarterback and won the Super Bowl. So there's just nothing stopping him. I'm not going to pick him unless he has an insane fall off, or I'm not going to not pick him unless he has an insane fall off.
Yeah, you can't pick against Patrick Mahomes really at all for MVP of this division. I mean, even if you don't pick him for MVP of the league, he still is the most valuable player in the league. It's not really close. He's won back-to-back Super Bowls, best quarterback in the NFL right now, and he's trying to just to continue that. So I got Patrick Mahomes at MVP of this division.
All right. Moving on here. Oh, no, go ahead.
Really quick news, just our third follow-up on Tyrone Tracy. I know he's a very, very mid player. I mean, rookie. Can't even call him mid yet, but the injury is being diagnosed as a sprained ankle.
Okay. So, bro got airlifted off for sprained ankle.
Yeah, they did the helicopter and everything.
Yeah. Canceled practice for a rolled ankle. But all right. As a Lions fan, I genuinely didn't even know that this was such a common thing. Is this just a thing that teams do? I haven't really noticed that. We're just stopping practices when someone gets hurt now.
Well, I know they did that for Rondale Moore, and
you said they did it for Tyrone Tracy too.
I thought I saw that they did it. I'm not 100% sure about Tyrone Tracy. I'm 100% sure they did it for Rondale Moore.
I don't really get it. Ooh. I get it if it's one of your best players has a season-ending injury. I get that. But are we just anytime anybody gets really hurt, we're just gonna call it?
Yeah. It'd have to be a gruesome injury for me to really.
Yeah. It'd have to be something that's guaranteed season-ending or a DeMar Hamlin incident. I feel like that yeah. Something that okay, the players are going to be seriously mentally affected by this. I mean, maybe they're mentally affected by Tyrone Tracy's sprained ankle, but
I mean, maybe. Because I can't even remember. I just know Rondale Moore was a knee injury. I thought. I don't know if it was a.
We're talking about it. This is going to be the most we talk about Tyrone Tracy the entire season is right now.
No, Tyrone Tracy's going to pop off. Just watch.
This is his moment right here.
Boiler legend.
Yeah. But we can move on here now to the NFC West. Starting off with the team that lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl last year, the San Francisco 49ers. They add Malik Collins from Houston, Devondre Campbell from the Packers, Tracy Walker from the Lions, Leonard Floyd, Yetur Gross-Matos, and they drafted Ricky Pearsall with their end of the first round pick. He's a receiver out of Florida. They lost Eric Armstead, Randy Gregory, Chase Young, Javon Kinlaw, and Sebastian Joseph Day, all on defense. Their biggest weakness for me is, I think they have a couple of weaknesses. One, I want to say this is a worse roster on paper than last year. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. The offensive line is a significant weakness, especially if they're without Trent Williams for some time, which they could be with his dispute. And I think he's also hurt. I think he's hurt and he's trying to get a new contract. So not great for them in that department, and their O-line outside of him is a weakness, in my opinion. And when you have a guy like Purdy, who I I do believe Purdy's a good quarterback. He's had everything spoon fed to him. This is going to be the first time he doesn't. He's still going to have a lot spoon fed to him, but this is going to be the first time he doesn't have like the perfect situation around him. He's still going to have a great play caller. He's still going to have great weapons with CMC and Debo. But when you take and Kittle, but when you take a guy like Trent Williams away from him, or you take his offensive line as a whole kind of away from him, or you take Brandon Ayuk away from him, I expect to see some regression there. Like I said, though, with the weapons, you still have CMC, Debo, Jennings, Kittle, and Pearsall. I think they're going to be solid weapons for him, even when they lose Ayuk here, which is just all but a formality at this point. Despite losing Eric Armstead, Floyd, Collins, Hargrave, and Bosa should still be a top tier D line for them. I don't think that's going to be a problem. Most teams, you lose that many pieces on your D line that are very effective for you, you're going to have an issue. I don't think that's going to be an issue for the Niners, though. Secondary. So this was a note when I little behind the scenes. I took my notes from last year. I just removed every point I had and just restarted it. But the only bullet point I did leave intentionally, I said secondary is very shaky outside of Ward and Hufanga. That is the exact same situation they're in this year. Like they have Ward and Hufanga. Hufanga's healthy now, which is big. He got hurt for them last year. But their secondary is very shaky outside of those two guys. I think their offense will still be good despite having the O-line hurting Purdy. I think we're going to see that be a difference early on. I still think they're a top team, but like I said, I think they have an objectively worse roster on paper than they did last year at this time.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. This team is still dealing with some injuries that they received last season, especially the big one in the Super Bowl with Dre Greenlaw. He's still out. I don't know if he's really expected to come back this season at all. It was a torn Achilles. That's just a brutal injury, especially for football players. So they still got Fred Warner, best linebacker in the NFL, in my opinion. They got Devondre Campbell as well. They brought him in. I think that he's going to have to make some big. He's going to have to step in and fill a big hole there. Their defense, they still have great guys like you said. They brought in Leonard Floyd. Hopefully, he can kind of bring in some pass rush off that left side. Their secondary is shaky. I'm very glad Hufanga's back. That was a rough injury for them last year as well. They still got Charvarius Ward, one of the best cornerbacks. They brought in Rock Ya-Sin as well, I guess. I see him on there. That could be a guy who steps up as a secondary guy. Yamador Lenore is just kind of a solid piece. I expect this defense to just kind of do what they did last year. They're great, well coached. I think they're just going to continue that. And offensively, CMC also dealing with a little bit of an injury, like I had said earlier. He'll be back by week 1. Brandon Ayuk possibly gone. Could hurt Brock Purdy a lot. Like you said, this is the first time he hasn't been in maybe the perfect position. I still expect him to be a very solid quarterback. I think in this system with Kyle Shanahan, the offensive line isn't as important as it would be with other teams. They get the ball out pretty quick, and I think Purdy's just gonna get the job done. And they got George Kittle as a tight end who can also pass block very well for him. So I think there might be a little bit of an adjustment early in the season. Maybe we see them struggle a little bit. People will think it's Super Bowl finishing as the runner-up in the Super Bowl, the hangover. We haven't seen a team, I think, finish second in the Super Bowl and then come back and make the Super Bowl again in a long time. I just think they're going to start out slow and then pick it up towards the end and compete for another Super Bowl.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head who has recently finished second and came back and won. Was the
well, the Niners
Denver? Peyton Manning, they lost to Seattle and they came back and beat Carolina. Was that 14-15?
No, I think that was. I think
there might have been
2 years.
There might have been a year between that. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them. I think it's even make them. I think it's even make the playoffs. They haven't done it in a while. A team lose the Bowl and make the playoffs. Because the 49ers missed the playoffs the year after they might have.
The year after
Garoppolo might have got hurt.
Did they miss the playoffs in what year would that be? 2022? That would be the year that.
No, they had to have made it because
I would assume they were in it when Brady won in 22 or 21. I think that was 21 when Brady.
Yeah, they were because they lost to the Rams. Well,
no, that was 22.
Let me go look.
That was 22.
They lost the Chiefs in the Super Bowl in 2019, and then they missed it in 2020.
Oh wow!
So yeah, I think it's been a long time since.
Was there a year in between the Broncos?
I think
Probably.
I'm pretty sure
I
because I
think
think in between that was
I can't even. I remember the Seahawks killing the Broncos, and I remember the Broncos
oh yeah
beating the Panthers, but I can't remember if there was a year in between that. If there was, it was just 1 year. It wasn't that far apart.
yeah, and now that I remember it, it was the Colts that beat them.
Beat who?
We beat the Broncos in 2015, and so the 2014 playoffs we beat the Broncos.
Oh, 2014 AFC finalist. That was the Flakegate.
Yeah,
Was the year in between was the Flakegate.
yeah, the
That makes
AFC
sense.
finalists. Shout out Jim Irsay for taking down the AFC finalists finally.
And
Thank
giving it to Big
goodness.
Cat and PFT.
Yeah, they gave it to Barstool.
I
Yeah,
didn't realize that
shout
was the
out.
real one until like
Yes,
yesterday. I saw that he
real.
gave it to him. I thought it was just a replica. That's crazy.
Yeah.
He took it down finally.
We took down the finalist
PJ
banners.
Merce's signature on the letter. That was
Oh
hilarious.
yeah.
It was
Well,
the most chicken scratch signature ever.
I hope he's doing okay. His health seems to be declining a little bit, and that sucks to see. He's one of my favorite owners on my
Yeah.
teams.
How
Probably
old
my
is he?
favorite owner.
That's not a high bar though. That's not a high bar.
It's not a high bar. He's 65, but I mean, he's had issues with health
Yeah.
just as a whole. I mean, he used to be a bodybuilder, so
Yeah. Hopefully,
just
hopefully he ends
shout
up
out his
okay.
younger days.
Full transparency. You said 65. If I had to guess, I would have said 83.
Yeah.
I would have said way older. He just looks old though.
Don't do
What's his health
drugs.
problem? Oh, that's his issue.
Well, it's just I mean, I don't think it's the drugs now as much as just kind of different heart things.
Oh,
I
it's a
think he had a
heart issue.
I
Oh, he had
think
a stroke. I
he
think.
had a
Yeah,
stroke,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
think the drugs kind of they tried to say he overdosed last year, but that was just false. Thanks whoever reported that one.
What did
That
they say
prick.
he overdosed on?
I don't remember, but they said he overdosed when I think in reality he just had a stroke. And
Jesus Christ.
it was like a massive news thing too. It was like ESPN or something.
I
Or it might have
remember.
been NBC Sports.
I remember hearing about the stroke. I don't remember seeing the overdose part, but it's got to be brutal. I also don't. Did he go come out
It
and
was
deny
Yahoo.
that?
It was Yahoo. Yes, he denied it.
Oh, okay. I must have just completely missed that.
The police logged it as an overdose, so it went out public that he overdosed, but he didn't actually
Oh,
overdose.
yeah. That would
It was
make
just a
sense.
stroke.
they
Still fuck him.
they're like Jim Irsay's in trouble. Fuck it, it's an overdose.
Yeah, that's yeah.
He gets into a car accident. Their first thought is overdose.
Yeah, he must be drunk.
But
Alcohol. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's what they said it was. They said it was alcohol.
No.
Oh,
He's
I was
just
like,
had
what the-
alcohol
Oh
issues.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah.
Jim Irsay though.
Yeah.
My favorite owner in my teams by far.
All right. Moving on here to the Seattle Seahawks. Prepare for this is a mouthful here of their ads and losses, but
Yeah.
their ads added Laken Tomlinson, Jerome Baker, Rayshon Jenkins, George Fant, Sam Howell, and they drafted Byron Murphy the second. Their losses are Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, Will Disley, Bobby Wagner, Drew Lock, Devin Bush, Jordan Brooks, Damian Lewis, Evan Brown, and Colby Parkinson. They lost a ton of guys. I love the draft pick of Murphy on field. I think he's a perfect fit for them. One of the worst O lines in the league on paper, in my opinion. I think this is going to lead to a down year for Geno Smith. He has had a great past few years in Seattle. Maybe great is a stretch. Great for Geno Smith. They've been solid years overall. I think we see a down year from him this year, but his weapons are still fantastic. He still has K9. He still has JSN, DK, and Lockett, which is one of the better wide receiver trios in the league. I think the secondary should still be pretty solid. I expect Devin Witherspoon to make a big jump in year 2. He was really good in year 1. I think he continues to be really good. I assume he's probably, let me see the depth. Is he cornerback 1 over week 1 or?
He's listed as their nickel, so
He is? Oh, yeah, I see it now. Oh, interesting. But yeah, I think he makes a big jump in year 2. Jerome Baker is a good replacement for losing both Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks, but he's not perfect, but it is a good enough replacement for both of those guys. Trenches, I think just on both ends are the biggest weakness for them. They're gonna minus a couple guys, of course. You have Byron Murphy, who I said is pretty good, Leonard Williams as well. And then on the offensive line, Charles Cross is solid, Laken Tomlinson solid, but the right side of their line in the middle sucks. I think the trenches are the biggest weakness for them. And I think that's something that when you don't have a super talented quarterback, having great trenches is a way that you could produce wins. I think not having that is going to be a problem for them, and I think we see a regression from the Seahawks this year.
Yeah, we said it last year. At least I know I did. The weakness on this team is the trenches on both sides of the football, really. I like the addition of Connor Williams on the O-line. Lincoln Tomlinson can be good as well, but overall, the offensive line is not good. And then the defensive line, you have pieces like Leonard Williams. You drafted Byron Murphy, Jonathan Hankins, Jermont Jones. I just think I'm just not the biggest fan. I love the addition of Jerome Baker, like you said. Their secondary, they have two elite corners in Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon. Julian Love, he's solid. But you lose Jamal Williams. Quandre Diggs, I think, is still a free agent right now, unless he recently signed. He might have just signed with the Titans, actually. I can't remember.
He did, because I remember you
Yeah.
being like, "How did we fumble that one?"
Yes,
I
that's what
remember
it
that.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, Justin Simmons is the one that's still available.
Yeah.
I
Seems like he's
also
kind of being blackballed a little bit after last year.
he's got a couple. I know, and he's a phenomenal safety. He had a visit
He
with the
is.
Saints, and he has another visit today with someone, but it's not the Colts, and that sucks. So, but back to the Seahawks at the quarterback position with Geno Smith is the one kind of. I mean, I think he's gonna have to not be as good. He's losing his OC. They did bring in a new head coach, Mike McDonald, offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb, defensive coordinator Adin Durde. So a completely new coaching staff here in Seattle after they finally part ways with Pete Carroll. um, Sam Howell, they also brought him in as a backup quarterback. If Geno Smith does struggle, it could be interesting to see him get a chance and step in and maybe kind of continue what he started last season. He did not finish good at all for the Commanders, but he had a good start. Maybe a new scenery will be good. He's got some elite weapons. Like you said, this wide receiver room is one of the best in the NFL. You got a tight end in Noah Fant who's solid. Pharaoh Brown, he's a good blocker. I just don't know really what to expect from this team. I think their defense, like I said, their trenches are bad, but overall, I think Mike McDonald could get this defense to overperform and maybe win them a few games, but I don't really expect this team to make the playoffs.
All right, moving on here to the Los Angeles Rams. They went 10-7 in 2023, completely overachieved. This one was funny looking back at how we looked at the
Oh,
Rams at
yeah.
the beginning of last year. I'm assuming. I mean, I haven't done my notes for the other four divisions we haven't done. I'm assuming this is going to be the one we were the most wrong about, or at least me. I was
Oh,
the most wrong
definitely.
about. But they lost in the wild card round to the Detroit Lions. Their offseason was really weird. Of course, they have maybe the biggest loss of any team in the entire NFL, losing Aaron Donald to retirement. But that was outside of Carson Wentz, basically their only loss of the entire offseason. They add Jimmy G, who is going to be their backup quarterback, even though he's suspended. Trey White, Darius Williams, Jonah Jackson, Colby Parkinson, Cameron Curl, and then they drafted the D-line pair from Florida State, Verse and Fisk. Of course, Donald is a monster loss, but that being your only bad loss at all, not even basically at all, just at all, that being your only loss is not bad. The O line is going to be very much improved. I know there are Jonah Jackson and Havenstein are already hurt, but I think they should be back early in the season. Maybe not week 1, but early in the season. Steve Avila had a great year guard last year. He's moving to center now. Their weapons, of course, are phenomenal. Kyron, Cup, Puka, and a great O line, which puts Stafford in line for another monster year. He just needs to stay healthy. Um, I'm gonna go and give a bold take. I think Stafford is going to be in the MVP conversation this year. I think he's going to have a phenomenal year. This is the best O line he's probably had since he won the Super Bowl with the Rams. There is the best O line he's had since he won the Super Bowl with the Rams, and hopefully his weapons can stay healthy. Like you said earlier, Puka's hurt, but hopefully he's back for them. Maybe not for the Lions week 1, but hopefully he's back at some point for them. They need one, if not both, of their FSU rookie duo to succeed in the pass rush. I think they will at least get one of them to succeed, if not both. I expect about an average defense from them with a top offense in the league. I think they're going to finish something like top 5, 6, 7 in total offense. But I think their defense is probably going to be in the 16, 17, 18 range, which leads me to believe they're not going to be this insanely dominant team, but a team that you really don't want to see if you can't score a ton of points.
Yeah, you don't. If you don't want to see if you can't score points, I also, before I start this, I have a sneaky hot take that this team could. I think they could contend with the 49ers to win this division, especially if their offense is as good as it can be. They have one of the best wide receiver duo in the NFL with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. And the running back room, you got Kyron Williams, who was great last season. He did have a little bit of a fumbling issue, but not too much to worry about. And then you go out and drafted Blake Corum, who I think is a phenomenal running back. He's very good, and I know Kyron Williams was dealing with, I think, a wrist injury in the offseason. If that gets banged up at any time in the season, you won't be worried. You can just put in Blake Corum, and I think he will be phenomenal for you. Stafford and Nakua, great duo. Stafford and Cup, great duo. I think this offense, like you said, is going to score a lot of points. The O line, I think, will be able to get the job done and just do the job. You bring back Tyler Higbee as well. I think he is injured or banged up right now, but you still have him. You brought in Will Dissly, another just kind of, or Colby Parkinson, not Will Dissly, depth tight end. And then defensively, you touched on Aaron Donald. You can't replace Aaron Donald ever in the NFL. He's maybe the best defensive player of all time. He's definitely one of them. But you go and draft a guy like Jared Verse, who I think could be very good. You Braden Fisk, you kind of recreate him with a guy on the outside and a guy on the inside. I think this defensive line could do a little bit better than you expect. Kobe Turner's been good. But I think overall this defense is going to just be average, and the offense is going to be elite, and that's going to win them games. They brought in Tre'Davious White as well. I think they're going to be a very good football team.
Watch us be completely wrong this time.
Oh,
like they're fucking horrible this year.
We're going to have to split up next year if that's true.
Yeah, that's absolutely what's gonna have to happen. They also, I will say, my one negative about the Rams is a lot of, I would say, all of their biggest impact players are injury prone. So
Yeah,
that, I mean, when you look
that's
at
scary.
their offense, Stafford, I mean, he's been injury prone his whole career. He just played through it for the first 11 years, and now he sits when he's hurt. I guess they're a little bit more cautious in LA than they are in Detroit. But then you have Kyron, Cup, and Puka, who are all guys who have been hurt in their careers. Cup for an extended period of time. Puka, he was hurt for a couple games last year, right? He missed like 2 or 3. I thought Kyron,
Puka?
of course, missed a lot. Yeah,
I think he missed maybe 1 or 2.
I thought he missed a couple. Maybe he was just banged up and playing through it. But
Yeah, he might have been. We saw in the preseason game, just to break news, Stetson Bennett is not good.
Yeah, shocker. And speaking of Georgia quarterbacks, the Lions signed Jake Fromm. We didn't talk about that in that line.
Oh, yeah.
Hendon Hooker's
Jake
hurt.
Fromm.
Jake Fromm is now
Jake from State Farm.
Yep, one of the goats. But okay, moving on to our final team here before we get into standing and award predictions. The Arizona Cardinals, who were 4-13 in 2023, and they get a lot of ads this year. First thing I'll say before we get into the ads, both of us are pretty high on Kyler Murray. So I think we're just not gonna, with Honk here or with Zach not here, we're not gonna have to fight anybody on the Kyler Murray hype train. But they add Justin Jones, Bilal Nichols, Jonah Williams, Sean Murphy Bunting, Evan Brown, who is a guard / center who is very versatile, and I've just always liked him. Mac Wilson, Marvin Harrison, of course, they drafted, and Darius Robinson, who they both drafted in the first round. They didn't have many notable losses at all, really. They lost Hollywood Brown, they lost DJ Humphries, they lost Lekay Futu. That's about it. I love their draft. I really liked Robinson going into the draft. I had him in the first round, and I think both of our mock drafts. He has the potential to be a great pass rusher, and Marvin Harrison's just going to be a top receiver. That's just what it is. The O-line is definitely not good, but there's a lot more worse. Or there are a lot more worse, whatever, on paper.
There's a lot worse.
There's a lot worse on paper, yeah. Offensive lines in the league. Kyler Murray is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the league. We've said that for a long time. I think he's going to have a great year. The weapons after Marvin Harrison are few and far between for Kyler. That I could see being a very big issue. It's legitimately going to be the Kyler and Marvin Harrison show on offense, with James Conner, I guess, there too. But my real positive for this team is I just think they're going to have a solid defense. They had a solid defense last year despite not having a ton of talent. Gannon did a great job with them after people were the lowest I've seen in a long time on him before they played a single game, and now I think people are pretty confident that he's a solid head coach. They had a great pass defense last year and one of the worst run defenses. I think they really solidify themselves as one of the most underrated units on defense as a whole in the league. While I don't think they're going to be a great team, I think they're in a decent spot. And I think because they have a scrappy defense, a head coach who has gotten the most out of his players in his first year, and a wide receiver quarterback duo that is one of the best in the league. I think they're going to be in a decent spot and win some games they shouldn't win. So I'm not extremely low on the Cardinals. I could see them having a bad year because they no doubt have holes. Their O-line isn't great. Their weapons after Marvin Harrison aren't great. Although I think they're going to be a good defense, there's definitely much more talented defenses in the league. I think they're going to win some games they don't. I think they're going to be a scrappy team you don't want to face towards the end of the year.
Yeah, this is a team that going into the season, I don't have that many expectations of them winning a lot of games, but I just really can't wait to watch them. I'm very excited to see Kyler Murray play first season with back with a full off season of training. Got to play all off season with Marvin Harrison Jr. He is coming off that torn ACL a year and a half ago. I'm just excited to see that duo so much, Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. He's one of the most hyped receiving prospects out of college in a long time. I think he's going to be phenomenal. I think he might be a top 10 receiver to start his career. We saw last year James Conner was very solid. He is getting older. I think he'll be just good enough to get him by this year. I'm very excited about Trey McBride as well, their tight end. He was great last season with Kyler Murray. Him and Kyler were kind of the two bright pieces we saw from this Arizona Cardinals team. Greg Dortch, I think he could be very good as well. I think this pass offense is going to be very solid with McBride, Wilson, and Harrison Jr. They got Zay Jones there as well. Michael Wilson, like you said, their offensive line isn't good, but you just want to see more development from Paris Johnson. I like Jonah Williams, Evan Brown as well. And then defensively, like you said, maybe on paper they don't have the biggest names, but I think Jonathan Gannon will have this defense playing very well. This team really last year, like you said, they didn't have much talent, but they went out there every game. They played their heart out. You never questioned whether they wanted to be there or not. I think this defense is going to be better than average, I'd say. I don't think they're going to win many games overall. They don't really have the talent to win many games and compete with the top two teams in this division. But I think they're just going to be kind of fun to watch. They need Budda Baker to have a better season than he did last year. But yeah, I think they're just going to be fun to watch.
All right. Moving on to our standing predictions here. I'm starting out with the 49ers in first place. And before I get into them, I just wanted to say on the Ayuk point, I've never seen more fake trade and fake trade rumor tweets in my life for any player than Ayuk. Like I was just scrolling Twitter and this is the first tweet I see. Per sources, the biggest hangup on the Brandon Ayuk trade is Connor Hayward. I'm told 49ers GM John Lynch is infatuated by the offensive Swiss Army knife and even signed off on a trade package that included Hayward. Steelers GM refuses to part with the young star. So
That's crazy. To mention Connor Hayward though, Connor Hayward is one of my favorite football players in the NFL. I love Connor Hayward. He went to Michigan State. Just legend.
Swiss Army knife.
Tight end. I mean, at Michigan State, he played tight end, fullback. He was started as a running back, receiver. I love Connor Hayward, though. Don't disrespect Connor Hayward.
The Steelers cannot part with the young star.
I don't blame him, man. Connor Hayward's a legend.
But like I said, I have the Niners in first. I think they have the best roster on paper, but I agree with you. I think the Rams for sure can win this division. I have them at second. I think they're going to be very close. Last year, they were 2 games apart at the end of the year. I think that does also include. I'm trying to think. I know the Rams and Niners played with their backups in at the end of last year. Is it? Am I blanking on that, or is that's true?
Yeah.
Sure. And then I think the Rams got a free win. I think from that.
And that's why they played the Lions.
And that's why they played the Lions. Yeah, or maybe
was.
Yeah, because they moved up to the 6th seed. Yeah. They were going to be the 7 if they lost. They beat the Niners when it was like Darnold versus I can't even remember who they had as their backup. The Rams, but they did finish 2 games behind them in the division because of that game. So really, they finished. We'll say 2.5. I think they could definitely make up that ground. The Rams got better in the offseason. Despite losing Aaron Donald, the Niners did not get better. But I still have the Niners edging them out and getting first. I have the Rams finishing second. And this is where it's really tough for me with the Seahawks and Cardinals. Even though the Seahawks are the more talented team on paper, I was so tempted to take the Cardinals because I think the Seahawks are going to have that fall off. But I think it's Seahawks third, Cardinals fourth, and only the Rams and the Niners making the playoffs from this division.
Yeah, it was Carson Wentz versus Sam Darnold in that game last year.
Carson Wentz. I don't know why I blanked on him.
Yeah. For the standings here, I touched on that. I think the Rams can win this division, and I think they can. I'm gonna go with the 49ers to win as well. They do have the MVP candidate in Christian McCaffrey. I think their offense is going to be fine. I think they might start slow and then finish off the season very good, but I think it's going to be a close race. Maybe one game or maybe a tiebreaker separates the 49ers and Rams. So I have 49ers 1, Rams 2, and then I'm with you with the 3 and 4. I want to pick the Cardinals as well to finish 3 with Kyler Murray having a phenomenal season, kind of proving people that he is that elite level quarterback that I think he is. But I'm going to pick the Seahawks just to get by them as well and finish 3rd. We've seen they have a lot of talent in the secondary, a lot of talent on offense with their receivers and running backs. I think they're just going to be able to win, maybe split the game with the Cardinals, but win more overall, and then I have the Cardinals finishing fourth. But I think the Cardinals are going to be a very fun team to watch.
All right, moving on here. Then speaking of the Cardinals, to the awards, Offensive Rookie of the Year, self-explanatory, Byron Murphy, Marvin Harrison Jr. easily. I mean, there's no question for me there. I think he's going to be dominant. He's the only weapon in Arizona. I guess that could be kind of a problem because they're not going to have to focus much on anything else. Hopefully, for his sake, they can establish a run game with James Conner. If they can do that, I think it's going to open up a lot more for Marvin Harrison. But if it gets to the point where they don't have a run game and their only significant passing option is Marvin Harrison, I could see that being a problem. It's very easy to scheme against that. But I still have Marvin Harrison as the offensive rookie of the year. He's the most talented offensive player in the draft.
Yeah, I have Marvin Harrison Jr. as well. If we did the offensive rookie of the year for the entire NFL, I like Caleb Williams, but I think I'd still pick Marvin Harrison Jr. over him to win that. He's got Kyler Murray, who I think he's going to have a great connection with. I think Trey McBride can be a great passing option for them as well, but I think he's going to be by far and away their best player on their team almost overall. So I got Marvin Harrison Jr. as their offensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, I think I got Caleb as like finishing fifth for offensive rookie of the year.
Bo Nix ahead of him.
Marvin Harrison, Bo Nix. Let's see.
Jaden Daniels, who looked good in his training.
Xavier Worthy,
preseason.
Michael Penix. But moving on here to defensive rookie of the year. Yeah. I have Byron Murphy. I had an honorable mention here for Darius Robinson. I picked Byron Murphy because it's a scheme fit. One of my favorite picks in the draft. I like drafting positional need. That's what the Seahawks did with Byron Murphy. I was happy when they did that for them. Although I think Darius Robinson's going to be a sleeper that people are going to learn his name towards the middle of the season. I'm still going to go with Byron Murphy.
Yeah, I was between Byron Murphy and Jared Verse, but I went with Jared Verse to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to be great for the Rams coming off the edge. They lost Aaron Donald. They need someone else to kind of get more pressure on the quarterback. I think he's going to be big for them. They need to be able to get to the quarterback, and if the Rams want to be successful, I think Jared Verse is going to have a great year.
All right. Offensive Player of the Year. I can't believe I'm picking this player as Offensive Player of the Year, but I'm just you have to have skepticism at this position when you get to a certain age. And of course, the injuries are something you have to take into account. I have CMC as my Offensive Player of the Year. I still think he's the best running back in the league, but I think you just have to take into the fact that, one, he's already injured, which is common for CMC. But I think his workload last year is just very, very hard to maintain again. I think that's why it makes it really... You're in a difficult spot if you have the first pick in the fantasy draft this year. You're truly in a loose, because if you're like second or third, you're like, all right, I'll take whoever makes it out between CMC and Tyreek or whatever you want to do. But if you have the first pick, it's just a very, very tough pick this year, in my opinion. But regardless, I'm still going to take CMC. Still think he's the best at his craft, and he's going to get enough of a workload where he's going to have ridiculous stats. Hopefully for the Niners, he could stay healthy throughout the year.
For my OPOY, I wish I could just pick the trio of Stafford, Kupp, and Nakua, but I think I'm just going to go strictly with Matt Stafford as a whole. I have a feeling you picked him for MVP, but I think he's going to have a great season. He's got great weapons to throw to. He's got a great run game behind him. He's got one of the best coaches behind him as well. We didn't even touch on that, but I think Matt Stafford's going to have a phenomenal season. He's getting older, but he keeps playing better. He's got new teeth. I think he's going to be great.
He does have new teeth. Which I'm not sure how new they are. We saw him this week, but I don't know. Maybe I just didn't notice him. You don't really see many close-ups on him that often. No. But DPOY, there are some options for DPOY, of course. With Aaron Donald leading the division, that takes out maybe the biggest option. You could go with a lot of guys from the Niners, in my opinion, but I'm just gonna play it safe and go with Nick Bosa. He's just one of the best edge rushers in the league, on one of the most talented D-lines in the league, which although he does get double-teamed a lot, you see it with Hutch. He's very, very talented, but until they get other pieces on that line, he's going to continue to be the most double-team player in the league, and it's going to be so hard for him to have a season where you're going to consider him for DPOY. Nick Bosa is not going to have that problem as much, and I think he's going to have another dominant year. You said it before, he could lead the league in sacks, so give me Nick Bosa.
Yeah. I was between Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. I went with Fred Warner. I think he's the best linebacker in the NFL. I think he's going to have to do more with Dre Greenlaw being out for probably most of the season, if not the entire season, with that Achilles injury. I think Fred Warner is going to have a big season for the Niners. He's going to lead this defense again. I think their defense is going to be solid. So I got Fred Warner winning DPOY.
And yeah, you said it. At MVP, I do have Matt Stafford. I had Matt Stafford at OPOY, and and CMC at MVP, but when I looked at my awards after talking about out loud the division, I have to put Matt Stafford there. His biggest issue the past few years, even though he's had such a dominant receiving core and a ton of weapons and one of the better head coaches in the league, has been the fact that he's just gotten hit a ton, and that's been a problem. I mean, that's been his whole career, but especially the past few years, this O line is going to be really, really good. I hope for them they can stay healthy. Jonah Jackson is one of the more underrated guards in the league. Hopefully, Havenstein can get healthy for them. And then Avila's been great, and it was great last year. I think he's going to have another great year this year at center. Give me Matt Stafford. I think he's going to stay healthy all year. I think he's going to absolutely light up the stat sheet, especially if his defense ends up being average or a little below average, like we predicted. That's just going to help his stats even more. So, give me Matthew Stafford at MVP. He likes to be called Matthew. I don't really give a fuck, but I'll give him
hopefully
that respect, I guess.
whatever his wife wants to call him. But for MVP, I have
It
CMC.
always gets brought up.
I have CMC at MVP. I think he's the best player in this division. He's been the best running back. As long as he stays healthy, I don't see him not winning this. He gets the volume in the receiving game, the running game. They've been great. Hopefully, the offensive line can hold up for him this season with Trent Williams being, whether he's holding out or hurt. I know Trent Williams wants just guaranteed money at this point in his career. He's older, but I think CMC is going to have a great season again. He gets the volume. He's the best running back in the NFL. It's really not a debate, and I think he's just going to continue that going into the season. He is getting older, so that does kind of concern you with the injuries, but he's just phenomenal. So I have him as my MVP.
All right, so that should about do it for this episode of the Engage 8 podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow everything in the description. Our links are there for Spotify, TikTok, and all that good stuff. We will be back next week giving you what are we doing? South next week? AFC, NFC South previews. So we'll cover all those 8 teams in details. As always, we're going to do the awards for every division as we did today, as well as standing predictions. So look for that next week. And we're only a couple weeks away from getting into our week 1 preview, which we are so excited about. But thank you, everybody, for watching and listening, and we'll see everybody next week.